That is, we must wait for a few minutes. Don't worry, they will get them right now.
Welcome to Gorilla Doctors Live. Today, we are going to take you deep into the forest of Kahuzi-Biega National Park in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo to learn about our work protecting the health of critically endangered Growers gorillas. My name is Kirsten Gilardi. I am the Executive Director of Gorilla Doctors, and I am based at the University of California in Davis. I've been a wildlife veterinarian with the UC Davis School of Veterinary Medicine since 1998. I'm also the director of the Karen C. Dreyer Wildlife Health Center here at the vet school. It is such a pleasure to have you join us today to meet Doctors Eddie Kambale Sayalua, Fabrice Katembo Malonga, and Adolphine Lina Ntorobika, our veterinary team in DR Congo. But before I introduce them, just a reminder that you can send in your questions using the Q&A feature in Zoom anytime during our conversation. We will answer as many of your questions as we can at the end, although remember that we'll spend the last quarter of the hour with our guest, Tommy Wolf. Also, this is our first time offering closed captioning, so you can turn this feature on by clicking on the live transcript button along the bottom of your Zoom window. So without further ado, let's meet Doctors Eddie, Fabrice, and Lina. Good evening, team. Good morning for lots of us. We're live on Zoom, so everyone, fingers crossed that our internet connections hold for the next hour. Good morning.
Hello, everyone.
Bonjour à tous.
Greeting from Kahuzi-Biega National Park.
How about each of you introduce yourself and share a fun fact, either about yourself or about Growers gorillas? Eddie, you start.
Yes, thank you. I'm Eddie Kambale Sayalua, the head veterinarian in DR Congo. I have been with Gorilla Doctors since 2004. A fun fact. Did you know mountain gorilla have unique nose prints just like human fingerprints? It is how we identify individuals, but with Growers gorilla, it is not so clear. You see, Growers gorilla faces are longer and they have smoother noses than mountain gorilla. We cannot always see a defined pattern of wrinkles. We may have to use other physical features to help us identify individuals. For example, the shape of their ears or the presence of scars.
Eddie, okay, that's one of those fun facts I didn't know until I first started working with Gorilla Doctors. Seriously. Audience members, participation time. Did you know that about Growers gorillas already, that they have smoother noses than their cousins, the mountain gorillas? Put a yes or no in the poll so we can all test our knowledge of Growers gorillas. Let us see how many of us learned something new today. All right, watching the results. So most of us learned something new today. That's fantastic, wonderful. That's what Gorilla Doctors Live is for you all to learn something about gorillas and about Gorilla Doctors. Thanks for participating in the poll. Okay, Fabrice, please introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Fabrice Katembo Malonga, and I have been field veterinarian of Gorilla Doctors since 2020. I am going to share fun facts about myself. My wife and I welcomed our first child, Felician, on September 26th. It is a new world where we do not sleep or wake up when we want to. We are now on our son's schedule.
Fabrice, I think there are likely many parents with us today who can relate. I certainly remember those days very, very well.
Yes, but it is now about us. We are having fun.
I'm sure you are. Thank you, Fabrice, and congratulations. Okay, Lena, I know everyone is excited to hear from you, our newest gorilla doctor.
Hello, dear. How I love being called a gorilla doctor. I joined the Democratic Republic of Congo team as a field veterinary in 2021. I have two fun facts. First, I'm based at the Kauzi-Biega National Park, where I care for the 3 habituated gorilla groups. Second, I became the first female wildlife veterinary in my country in 2014. It is still a challenge in Democratic Republic of Congo for women to advise in career. My mom always believed in me, and I'm here today because of her.
Lena, I know the Growers Gorillas and Kahuzi-Biega are really lucky to have you caring for them, and we are also really grateful to your mother.
Thank you. It was not easy, but I was very motivated. I could not believe I was the first in my country. And I'm excited that now there are 5 female wildlife veterinary in Democratic Republic of Congo. I'm proud that other women in my country are following me. Those women have also received training from gorilla doctors. I'm not alone anyway. And we are doing good work.
Lena, tell us about your work. Tell our audience what it's like to monitor the health of the Growers Gorillas in Kahuzi-Biega National Park.
First, Kauzi-Biega is named for 2 mountains in the park. Kauzi, which means wind, and the Biega, which means rock. Now, over then a small area of Virunga National Park, Kauzi-Biega is the main protected area in Democratic Republic of Congo where gregarious gorilla remain. There has been a 70% decline in the overall population of gregarious gorilla, and the majority of them do not live in protected area. The forest of Kauzi-Biega National Park is thick and dense. Tracking the gorilla take time. To start, we found the nights, and then, following the trail of the food the gorillas leave behind. Trackers will spread out to locate the gorillas. We communicated by radio and marking trees to show the direction the gorilla are moving. We know when we are getting close, when we hear the gorilla vocalizing. And then there they are. I observe the group and spend time identifying each gorilla. I conduct a visual assessment of each individually, looking for any sign of distress or unusual behavior, and taking detailed notes. Sometimes the gorillas may hide and the forest is very dense. It can take time to get a good look, and there are days when I can't see enough to do a good assessment, especially if they are all down on the ground.
Lena, if I may, that is an important point to raise. There are certain things we look for, like snares, usually around arms or angles that can be almost impossible to detect if the gorilla is on the ground and surrounded by dense vegetation. So sometimes when they are up in the trees and their legs are dangling down, it becomes much easier to check for snares. And snares and poaching are still really, really big threats. This is an adult female mukolo. You can see she is missing the right hand and right eye, most likely the result of a snare when she was young.
Yes, snares are really tricky. One of my first interventions as a gorilla doctor was to remove a snare from a juvenile gorilla in Bonane group named Wilungula. Since then, he had made a full recovery on a recently health check. I found him rolling in the tree. In some other good news, I recently discovered an infant gorilla born to mother seal. It can be very difficult to know when a female is pregnant because babies are always big from feeding. New babies are the best surprise. And when you are responsible to protecting a critically endangered animal, the health of every single individual is important. Each one contributed to the health of the entire population.
I agree. Thank you, Lena. What great insight into our work and what it's like to track and treat wild growers gorillas. Fabrice, we'd love to hear from you next. Why don't you tell us about the growers gorillas that you and Eddie monitor in the Mount Shabarimu sector of Virunga National Park?
Yes, thank you. We monitor 2 small groups of growers gorillas in the Shabarimu sector of the park. It is north of the sector of Virunga National Park where the mountain gorillas live. The 2 geographic areas do not overlap. I was at Shabarimu at the end of October and found both groups in good health. We had to trek for nearly 3 hours before we found Kipura group. And Silverback Mwasa, the leader of Kipura group, was very protective and kept charging us. But he calmed down and I was still able to observe the individuals in the group. They all looked to be in good health. The second group is Kasavara group. I also conducted a health check on this group. The structure of Kasavara group is very interesting. There is a juvenile named Espoir, which means hope, who is cared for by a female that is now his biological mother. In 2021, Espoir's mother migrated to Kipura group, but Espoir stayed behind, and the odd female became his adoptive mother. Then in February 2022, Espoir's biological mother gave birth to an infant in Kipura group.
So Fabrice, in addition to tracking the gorillas to observe them for signs of illness and injury, you also have to keep track of the gorillas moving between groups, which is actually really a natural part of their social dynamics and their biology, right?
Indeed. Each visitor has a new experience and tells a new gorilla story.
Thank you, Fabrice. I think it's important to note that these natural movements between groups can also impact their health, which is one of the reasons that we keep track of these things.
Yes, keeping track of the group dynamics helps us to understand population health trends.
All right. Okay, Eddie, let's talk with you now. Even as head veterinarian in DR Congo, you are still in the field alongside doctors Fabrice and Lena, and you also have the responsibility for keeping your team safe. This is a very serious issue in DR Congo. Tell us a little bit about the challenges you face.
Oh, unfortunately, this is our reality, and we do what we can. Warfare is a constant threat here, and there are more than 120 militia groups who use violence and unpredictability, create chaos and fear. We have not been able to monitor the health of mountain gorilla in Virunga National Park, and that has been for many months, because M23 rebels occupy the area of the park.
So, Eddie, what I'm hearing you say, and I want to make sure this is clear for the audience, that the level of danger you all face really makes it hugely difficult for us to monitor the health of mountain gorillas in Virunga National Park right now.
Yeah, that's correct. And this past March, park rangers were able to check on the 10 groups that include over 200 mount gorillas, and the gorilla were okay. But the stability did not last long, and it has been several months since we were last able to assess the health of mountain gorilla in Virunga. We face similar challenges in our monitoring of the ground gorillas, and Dr. Lina had to evacuate Kauzi Biega for safety reasons twice in August. When we are able to monitor grouse gorilla, armed rangers must accompany us into the forest to provide protection.
And Eddie, just last month, you were trapped in Rumangabo, which is where Virunga National Park's headquarters are. You were there for a week because of the M23 rebels. It was terrifying for me, enough for me. I can only imagine what you experienced.
Yes. At that time, I was treating an orphan mountain gorilla, Matabishi, at Senkwekwe, when the rebel advanced toward Rumangabo. The road between Rumangabo and Goma was not safe to travel, even if we were with armed escorts. So I could not return to Goma, where I live and where gorilla doctor's office is located. So the park management was prepared and provided safe shelter in a cave that was equipped with power, food, and water. I even had internet and was able to stay connected.
Thank goodness for that, so that we could stay in contact by text. I think I even saw you on Zoom a couple times that week. It was always such a huge relief to be able to see you.
Yeah. Thank you. We keep going on.
Well, those of you who are new to the work of Gorilla Doctors, this conversation was a very real introduction to our work and the challenge of implementing conservation medicine in the wild. We've got a good amount of time for questions, and that's the purpose of today's GD Live. So we're going to start answering some of your questions that you've posed now for our wildlife heroes. So let's turn it over to you. I got to put on my glasses so I can read these. Okay, I've got a question from Skylar in Portland, Oregon. Let's see. I'm going to give this one to you, Eddie. What percentage of the Growers gorilla population is habituated enough to conduct a health assessment?
Hello, sorry.
Eddie, we can hear you, Eddie. A question from an audience member asking about what proportion of Growers gorillas are habituated enough so that we as gorilla doctors can conduct a health assessment.
That's a really good question. And as you may know, we're really facing many challenges going on ground. And sometimes we habituate many, and some arrests are coming back. Then again, they come back to like wild behavior. So at the moment, we are having in Kauzi Biega almost around 44 gorillas in number, which are in 3 groups. So those are the ones who really get close to them, and we can do the health assessment closely. We can treat them if they are sick, remove snares, like Lina was just explaining what has been going on with Wilungola in that Bonane group. So we have another portion of grouse gorilla. We are monitoring Chavrimwes, but Fabrice just said that. There we have 7 gorillas at the moment. So the number is growing slowly on that side too.
Yeah,
that's for the 2 groups from different locations we can monitor.
Thank you. Speaking of habituation, which is obviously what allows us to get close enough to the gorillas to see that they are injured or ill and may require our veterinary care, we have a question from Richard, and I'm going to pose this to you, Fabrice. So when we go in to get close to the gorillas and maybe do a clinical intervention, how do we make sure that the silverback is not going to get upset and want to interfere with our medical intervention? What do the other gorillas do when we are caring for one of their family members? Does anyone want to take that? Go ahead, Fabrice.
I don't catch you very well. What is the question?
Okay, question is, when we are doing a clinical intervention to treat an injured or an ill Growers gorilla, what do the other gorillas in the family group do while we are taking care of the patient, our patient in the forest. Eddie, do you want to take that?
Please, thank
Okay,
you
go
so
ahead.
much for and I try to explain something, and my colleague can jump on if he has something to add on. So when we are doing intervention, we always have two teams. We have an intervention team and a protection team. Protection team is composed of rangers and trackers, which have to make kind of wall to protect us. And we do our best to keep the rest of the group away from the individual we're working on, because if they are just getting close, they will not accept anybody to touch one of their member. So they feel they get like a threat. So they have to do their best to chase us away. So for us also, we do our best to keep them away from our side. And so we can work peacefully without any problem until we're done. And if we see anybody like among young ones, most of the time they can go up trees and then try to watch us what is going on with one of them. So at that time, we'll ask some people from the protection try to see if they can push them a little bit far from us. So that's how it is. But most of the time, without the animal, we pretend as if we just like tourists, we didn't do anything. So we just follow slowly, not harming them. We move slowly until we isolate the rest of the group from the one we are working on. So most of the time, it is that way we work. But sometimes we get some surprises. The baby can cry, even if when he was like under anesthesia and just wakes up, well, we didn't know that he was going that fast. Then he can scream. That way we get trouble. And so we manage to protect everyone. And that way we have to rush and like to reverse the anesthesia, and so we can stay safe. So it's always a challenge, and every day is really different and a new challenge. You can prepare very well, but you'll be surprised with a lot of challenges. So we always plan, be there ready to replan how we were really doing. Then we can, everything can change just at a minute, a second. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eddie. That's such a good point that, of course, we prepare as best as we can for every clinical intervention, but we always have to be prepared for things going not as planned or for gorillas to do something unexpected. So you all have to remain so flexible and ready to deal with any challenges as they come up. I see that Lena has her hand up. Lena, let's hear from you.
Yeah. Yes, please. It's like Dr. Eddie is telling. That what I watched, like a first experience when we was in we show the Wilungula intervention. I learned also we must be determined, knowing that everything can happen. The way you are with the baby gorilla, even if it's not down on the ground, the mommy try to come to take you on your arm, the baby. I know that I learned what I know usually. They may leave you, but you need to be determined and motivated to know that we must do it.
Yeah.
And other time, sometimes when you are going and you lost the individual after that thing, Dr. Eddie, sometimes and then you are worrying to know what can be happen after. That is, but it's a very amazing experience. I can't know how to explain it. That is motivating.
Yeah. No more true words have been spoken. I often use that same phrase, Lena, when I talk about being with the gorillas. It's really hard to explain what it's like to be with them. So thank you for that. We have a question from Marcy about whether gorillas have been affected by COVID. I think that question is for me. So I'll just answer on behalf of the organization. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has been a concern across the board, but as with any emerging infectious disease that's impacting humans, we always worry about the health of the gorillas too, because gorillas are susceptible to human pathogens, viruses, or bacteria. So we've been screening. So mountain gorillas, by the way, it's common for them to get respiratory illness. It happens year round. So it's something that we're accustomed to monitoring. And when there's a respiratory disease outbreak in a gorilla group, whether they're mountain gorillas or Growers gorillas, our veterinarians are going in every day to monitor signs, see if any animals are getting sicker or better. So since the COVID pandemic started, we've been monitoring gorillas for respiratory illness, and we've been collecting samples as we can. And by that, I mean, we're not anesthetizing gorillas just to get samples to test them for COVID. We're using non-invasively collected samples like fecal samples to screen for the coronavirus. And to the best of our knowledge, COVID-19 has not affected the gorillas. And in fact, we saw a decline, at least in Volcanoes National Park in Rwanda. We actually saw a decline in the number of respiratory disease outbreaks affecting gorilla groups during that pandemic compared to the years leading up to the pandemic. And we think that's for a couple reasons. Less people were in the park, of course, because during the pandemic, many fewer people traveled to the region to see the gorillas. That's changed now. People are back making trips to see the gorillas. But we also think it's because those basic preventive measures that we've all been taking ourselves to protect ourselves from COVID-19 and other respiratory infections, those same preventive health measures, wearing a mask, keeping distance, and not going to see the gorillas when people are sick, has really made a difference. And it's really wonderful to see that all the parks that where habituated growers and mountain gorillas live are now, they require people to wear masks when they're close to the gorillas. And we think that that's really going to make a huge difference. So, okay, more questions. Let's see. We're back to, there's a question from Debbie for Eddie. And this is, I think, related to the story that Fabrice was telling about gorillas in Mount Shabaremu. But the question is it common for a mother to leave her young behind, to move to a new group and leave her baby behind?
At some point that can happen, can leave behind not really a very small baby, but sometimes training the baby also to try to walk, also to manage in the forest is kind of training just to see if the baby can feed a bit away from the mom, not for longer. It's just always around or behind the silverback, because the silverback also take really good care of this baby. So it's not very often for the mom to leave the baby unless he knows he's already at age, almost at weaning, or just for feeding, but not abandoning the baby. No, that is rare. If the other one of Shabaremu stayed because it was already at age of weaning, and the man had already moved to another group and also pregnant. Those are one of the time the mother can leave the baby on his own, but with the group.
Thanks, Eddie. We've got a question from Krista. Fabrice, this is a question for you because I know you monitor the Growers gorillas in Mount Shabaremu. You also monitor mountain gorillas in Virunga National Park when you can. Are there behavior differences between Growers gorillas and mountain gorillas?
Okay. Thank you for this good question. I can say about social structure, Growers gorilla groups never have more than one silverback, while mountain gorilla groups can have multiple silverbacks. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And are there any other differences between, so we learned about their noses and the fact that it's harder to tell, you can't use the nose wrinkle pattern as definitively with Growers gorillas as you can for mountain gorillas. Are there other differences, you guys, in their anatomy, how they look, how they act?
The Growers gorillas have a longer face. I can say that.
Longer face. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mountain gorilla have I missed the good word for say that.
Okay.
That is the face like round.
Very good. Yeah, and of course they
Yeah.
live in different, somewhat the different altitudes, right? The Growers gorillas live on the slopes of the Congo Basin, whereas the mountain gorillas live on the tops of volcanoes. So there are differences in their hair coat, and Growers gorillas are bigger than their mountain gorilla cousins. We have a question also about how are they related. The mountain gorillas and the Growers gorillas are subspecies of the eastern gorilla, so that's why we call them cousins. They are the same species but different subspecies. We have a question, and this is common. But I'd love to hear from one of you who would like to take the question. Do the gorilla family groups learn that you, the veterinarians, are there to actually help their sick family members? This is a question from Autumn. Again, do the gorilla groups figure out that you are there to help them? What's been your experience there?
Actually, I have really one group experience in Virunga National Park, and that was in a Rugendo group where we were helping a juvenile Mayani who has a snare. And we darted the baby while the silverbacks were around, because as we said, mountain gorilla, they can tolerate the presence of many silverbacks in a group. And that was the case of Rugendo group. There were many silverbacks, so 4. And just once we darted the baby, the other young silverback wanted to attack us where we were just approaching the baby to try to remove the snare. But the dominant male, just his name Bukima, he just came in between and started just standing in between, pushing the other one away, just saying, no, don't approach these guys. It was as if he knew that these guys are doing good work on this guy. Because when we met them, they were carrying that baby with snare and so on. And we did the intervention, and no one of those silverbacks attacked us. So we did everything very well. And the silverback kept on moving in between, just making a hole. No one could jump out of that line. So I can say that was one of the experience we had where that was really trying to help us. As we did our intervention, until the end with no problem. So
that's one of my favorite stories of yours, Eddie. Thank you for sharing that with our audience. I'm sure they loved hearing that. We've got time for a few more minutes for some questions. I've got a great one for you, Lena, and I'm going to ask you because you shared that photo of the brand new baby Growers gorillas that you observed. Do you know when a female is pregnant before she gives birth, or is it always just a beautiful surprise to find a baby? That's a question for you, Lena.
Thanks so much for the question. It's very complicated to know that. First, you can't know because they have always the big belly on feeding. That is the important, when you saw them, you may confuse seeing all of them, saying maybe this one she's pregnant, the other she's pregnant. This is, you can't know. Usually it's surprise. Another way, when they meet, when you are there, when you watch at which date they meet, silverback and the female, you can go just account seeing, and you can suppose, you can think maybe in which month this female, habituated one, this female can give birth. If she's habituated, and you can know how to wash her every day. But usually it's a surprise. You are going to the morning time, there is a new baby, or the nest, you can see, like female, when you can see when someone, like in human behavior, if someone gives birth, you know what you can find on the nest. That is a very surprise.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Lena. We've had a few questions from audience members, and Eddie, I'm going to pose these to you, but do you have a sense for if war and the occupation of the park how has that impacted the gorillas? I mean, we talked about how the park is so unsafe for park personnel and for us. that we can't get in to monitor the health of the gorillas, but do you have a sense for what gorillas do in situations that like they're in right now where the park is occupied by militia groups?
That's really something which is a really good question, and we have been receiving that kind of questions several times. And at the moment, the gorilla were observed at some point trying to come closer to some patrol posts. So it means they were kind of missing some people who used to visit them on a daily basis. So they keep moving around, and we don't know what is happening to them, really. We hope they are good, and some can get injuries, so we don't know. We'll discover all those again when we get back. And then I'm sure there are a lot of snares now set there. And we may find many gorillas already losing some limbs. That is really something is horrible. We don't know really what is happening. So we were able to see few groups coming at the edge of the park that was around Kibumba. So those are the ones we tried to saw, and around Jomba, some came also around. So we think they are safe, not so safe enough, because poaching activities must be really, really going on. With a lot of risk of losing some gorillas and from diseases and from snares.
Yeah, and of course we know the gorillas are incredibly intelligent, and I just always think and hope that they're using those big brains of theirs to stay out of the way of danger. I know that there will be a time when we can get back into the park regularly, as we have always done, and I'm just hoping and counting on the fact that the gorillas have kept themselves safe, and we'll see them all when we can get back in there. I'm going to end our question session here with just a fun question from David in San Francisco, who asks, why doesn't everyone just agree that Growers gorillas are the best looking gorilla? Lena, do you agree with that? You're our Growers gorilla veterinarian.
Yes, please. I'm the best one, but most of them, it depends. That is a special dependence for each person. Yes, that's the best one, but the mountain also are the best one. By social behavior, what you are saying. It's very amazing what you discover every day. Every day, they teach us a lot. But you don't say it depends from each person. What did he feel? What did he live? But both of them are nice. They're very special.
Well, Lena, I can just listening to you and watching you, I can tell how much you love the gorillas that you care for. We are out of time for our Q&A with our team because we have a special guest that we'd like to have join us for the last 15 minutes. Doctors Eddie, Fabrice, Lena, thank you so much for your dedication, your hard work. Please stay safe, as I always say, but please keep up your extraordinary work taking care of Growers gorillas and mountain gorillas in Eastern DR Congo. It's wonderful to have you with us today. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're going to
See you later. See you later.
All right. Okay, it is my sincere pleasure to introduce you to Tommy Wolf. Tommy is the Executive Director of the Gorilla Rehabilitation and Conservation Education Center based in DR Congo. It's otherwise known as GRACE. Hi, Tommy. Welcome to Gorilla Doctors Live.
Hi there, Kirsten. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
For those of you who may not be familiar, GRACE is a sanctuary that cares for 14 orphaned Growers gorillas. Gorilla Doctors has a long history with GRACE. We actually cared for almost all of the orphans in Rwanda before the sanctuary was built. The first 4 orphans were transferred to GRACE in 2010, right, Tommy?
Yes, that sounds right. I think we had our first 4 in 2010 from you, and I think we had another 6 the following year in 2011. And yes, we go back a very long way. And, you know, I'm listening to the discussion that Dr. Eddie is just having with things being tough in the Congo at the moment. And one of the things that I've always appreciated about Gorilla Doctors, Kirsten, is that for all the people that do operate there, we all tend to hold hands and collaborate and lean on each other at times when we need each other. So we've been very grateful for your support and collaboration over the years.
Well, right back at you, Tommy. We're so grateful for what you do for Growers gorillas who have unfortunately been removed from the wild and need to be in the safety of human care. I joined Gorilla Doctors in 2009 and remember the first time that I saw all of the orphans at our facility in Rwanda. I actually had to stand up on the roof of one of our trucks to see them over the high wall of this facility. I was so new to Gorilla Doctors that, of course, I couldn't tell a mountain gorilla from a Growers gorilla if you paid me. But truly seeing the orphans, it may have been the first time I laid my own eyes on Eastern gorillas. Tommy, you joined Grace in 2020, very challenging time to take on leadership of an organization in a pandemic. When did you when did you as an individual first become aware of Grace, and tell us a little bit about your vision for the organization?
I had a business colleague and friend who sent me a video one day to say, hey, I've just joined the board of this amazing organization. And it was actually the story of Lulingu, one of our little rescued gorillas. And I was absolutely captivated by the video. But that woman actually is now the board chairperson at Grace. Her name's Laura Maloney. And I'm now the executive director. So I don't suppose that either of us knew that at the time we connected over Grace. But yes, I did indeed join at an interesting time. It was sort of 2 weeks before the pandemic became mainstream in the US, and it's been just an interesting time to period in history to be managing a nonprofit. But it's actually taught us more things than it's hurt us, to be honest. I feel like we've learned some really exciting things, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about it in a while. But to answer your question about our vision, Kirsten, or what we're hoping to do, we've really got the sanctuary down at this point. We've been doing it for over a decade. I think we're pretty confident that should a new gorilla come in as a baby from wildlife trafficking and poaching, and we haven't had some for a couple of years, which is great. We don't love getting them. It's a sad day of Grace because it means something horrible has happened to their family. But because the sanctuary is there and it's always got to be there, we've managed to sink a lot of roots into the Congolese soil. And we've got a large team on the ground, and we've got good relationships and strength. So we've really started putting a lot of effort into things that are bigger than just the sanctuary. So we work heavily with gorilla conservation and community engagement around gorilla conservation as well.
Yeah, one of the things I really appreciate is your vision statement, Grace's vision statement, in which you state your commitment to Growers gorillas being a source of pride for the Congolese people. In your opinion, why is that so important? And what are some of the ways that you partner with communities?
Thank you. I think that that people underestimate the importance of community with conservation, because in many ways you literally can't tease them apart. We're never going to be able to conserve gorillas in the Congo if we don't have the community buy-in and passionate all the way. I think Rwanda, where your head office is, has done an amazing job of that. And I think certainly where we work in the Congo, it's a tad more difficult because the gorillas are completely unhabituated, which means most of the people in our area have not seen a gorilla. It's something that they hear about. But nonetheless, the people in our area are sitting on one of the world's gems. It's a biodiversity hotspot. It's right in one of the huge Congo Basin forests, which are increasingly important on the planet. So, and the Congolese community have every right to be incredibly proud of this sort of global gem that they have. And then the other thing is, the other reason community is important is because they live off the forests. And it's hard for people in the US to imagine that people use the forests for medicine and fuel and food, and so they have a very vested interest in protecting their natural heritage. So their pride and understanding of everything that they need to conserve is vitally important to gorilla conservation.
I know that the land upon which Grace was built was actually donated by the local community, which is located next to the Taina Reserve, the Taina Forest Reserve. Why is that significant, and why was it an intentional choice when the Grace facility was built, to build it next to the Taina Forest Reserve and built it on community land?
Well, it's ended up having such far-reaching ramifications for Grace, the fact that we are located where we are. But yes, there are two traditional tribal kings that operate in this area, and they've been elected by the community, and they did donate the land for the sanctuary. I don't think many people are aware of this, but the IUCN has a CITES regulation that would like confiscated animals, animals confiscated from the wildlife trade, need to be repatriated to the country of origin. So we needed to put the sanctuary in the Congo somewhere, and this community actually donated their land for this purpose. And the community reserve, the Taina Nature Reserve that's showing on the screen now, was also donated by the community that owns that land. And it's become quite significant in many ways, because I feel, as Dr. Eddie was just doing a good description of, it's not always the safest place to work. There's a lot of armed militia and so on. And the fact that we actually are operating under the blessing, if you like, of the community and the tribal kings allows us to do things that people haven't always been able to do in the area. So I ascribe much of Grace's success to two things: the fact that we work under the blessing of the community at their invitation, and the fact that we can't go anywhere. We now run a sanctuary, we're there for the long haul, and I think that has bred a lot of trust from the community. They know we're there for them.
Yeah, and I think as impressive, I think, is the fact that the Taina Nature Reserve members, owners, whatever word you want to use, they themselves conducted a survey of the reserve for Grauer's gorillas. And that was a great opportunity for gorilla doctors to collect samples from wild, unhabituated Grauer's gorillas. If you'll recall, our gorilla doctors, veterinarians, trained the survey workers to collect and preserve hair and fecal samples that they might have been able to collect when they encountered night nests of Grauer's gorillas. And so at that point, we were essentially beta testing a protocol for collecting samples from wild Grauer's gorillas that we can later test for pathogens and other analytes that will give us a better sense for the health of wild Grauer's gorilla populations. We're about to expand that work into other parts of DR Congo where Grauer's gorillas survive, which we're really excited about doing. Tommy, what did Grace learn when you and the community did the Taina Forest Reserve survey? Are there wild Grauer's gorillas there? How many do you think there might be there?
We were absolutely delighted with the survey in so many different ways. It was really touch and go for a while because we were about to go and then COVID hit. And everybody was like, well, we had all the scientists lined up from the States to fly in and help. And we really had to use a plan B. And we ended up having, people training the field team via Zoom meetings and videos and so on. But so we were delighted that we got in. We're the first people who were ever able to do a full survey in Taina, which I totally ascribe to the fact that we work under the community's invitation. But it was madly exciting. We found a lot of gorillas, a lot of Grauers. It was a survey, so we don't come up with an exact count, but the numbers were really healthy, and we didn't think they declined a lot from what had been estimated before. So somewhere in the region between about 150 and 300, which is for a reserve that size would say that it's really thick with gorillas. Yeah. And we were actually delighted with all the other things we found too, Kirsten. There were many species that actually surprised the locals. We've managed to get web cams in now, and it still is a happy day. We keep finding things that surprise everybody. So
That's
it's
wonderful.
such a biodiverse place.
That's amazing. So that's fantastic. But as we discussed earlier this hour, growers, gorillas are critically endangered and their population has declined by 77% over the last 20 years. Can you kind of walk us through some of the key factors that are contributing to that decline, and how is Grace addressing some of those issues?
Thank you. Yeah, it really is an issue. And I can knock them off like, there's hunting and there's sustainable agriculture and that type of thing. But I think if I were to put it into a nutshell for your audience, Kirsten, it's really that there's huge pressure on the forest from a growing population. So, this area of Africa, the population has been growing quite dramatically. And people have been living in a certain way in the forest for hundreds of years, where the forests have supplied everything they need. But as the population grows, there's just pressure for resources on the forest. So slash and burn agriculture, subsistence hunting. So this isn't hunting to go and sell to foreign markets. And, this is a very good example of what hunting might look like in our forest. This is a kid, and he's probably been sent out for his mom to find something for dinner. There's lots of gorgeous rushing rivers and fishing. So he's got fishing tackle wound around his head, and he's proudly caught himself a little hare there. And so this is what it looks like. This is not somebody evil doing something terrible, which is what you think of when you think of poaching or hunting. This is somebody for the animal, just for the family. And it's hard with an economically disadvantaged group of people to put any judgment on this. This is what people need to do, right? But as the population grows, one's got to be careful. So the work that we do is all to try and find ways to minimize pressure on the forest. So, for example, we have woodlot programs, so people don't need to go to the forest to collect firewood. We've got food security programs. We've got guinea pig breeding programs for alternative sources of protein, lots and lots of education. We've worked with over 800 school children this year, and clean stove projects for women so that they aren't collecting fuel from the forest. So really it's really how do we actually reduce resource and pressure on the forest?
Yeah. I of course, thank you for that. And of course, I appreciate so much all the work that Grace does. Our part of the puzzle of gorilla conservation is veterinary care. And as I know, Tommy, and many of our audience members know, we began in 1986. We were providing veterinary care to mountain gorillas in Rwanda that were critically endangered at the time. And then in the 1990s, we expanded our efforts to monitor the health of mountain gorillas in Uganda and DR Congo too. And then it was in 2006 when we expanded our work to include growers gorillas that were undergoing human habituation in Kahuzi-Biega National Park. Of course, as gorilla doctors, we believe that monitoring and protecting the health of the remaining wild population is really just one piece of the very significant conservation challenge. So, Tommy, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. It was really important for us to include the great work of Grace and your leadership in growers gorilla conservation. As and I think our audience knows, we're really at a critical moment. And as you said, it's going to take all of us working together to reverse these very alarming trends in growers gorilla populations. As I often hear Eddie say, he has hope for gorillas and people because the gorillas can teach us how everyone should be protecting one another.
I think Dr. Eddie is completely right there. And Kirsten, just my enormous thanks for the incredible work that you do with gorillas. It's indispensable.
Thanks, Tommy. This has been a really enjoyable hour for me, and I hope an inspiring hour for all of you who have joined us. Thank you for your good company, and I hope you will keep gorilla doctors in mind as you spend time over the holidays thinking about the organizations you most care about. Take care. Happy holidays. Bye.
losses. We must wait for a few minutes. Don't worry, they will get them right now.